This video is part of a series intended to give an overview of the forms used by American Red Cross in our shelter operations. The shelter log form is used to record anything and everything that happens at the shelter. There are two main uses for this log form: as a shelter log, which records the usual and unusual happenings in the daily life of a shelter, such as staff changes, deliveries, donations, success stories, lessons learned. In short, it's the diary of the operation. But this form is also used as a manager's log. It serves as a record of running the shelter: staff issues, personnel problems, client complaints, solutions, arrival of unaccompanied minors, medical issues. Everything that in the shelter manager's mind rises to the level of "talk to my boss about this." Both versions of this form are considered confidential, and as such must be stored in a secure manner and location. Additionally, it should be noted that the manager's log is only to be shared with the supervisor of the other shift and with an incoming replacement manager. This is the shelter log form. In this case, it contains entries relevant to the general operation and the manager of the shelter to illustrate what would be written in both versions. The top box records the date this page was started, the number of the disaster operation, and the name of the shelter. The Red Cross staffer assigned to maintain this log by the shelter manager, or the shelter manager him or herself, will fill in this line. The form is simple in an attempt to allow details to be entered about the whole gamut of issues that arise in the life of a shelter. It has only 3 columns: the date and time of the entry, details of the entry, and what follow-up is needed. Let's take the first entry as an example of what would be written in the shelter manager's log. Shelter manager Bill Jones wrote this entry at 2:30 a.m. on May the 25th. The Smith family arrived at the shelter and registered. During the intake interview, James Smith said that yes, he was required to report to law enforcement when he spends the night somewhere other than his home. Bill called his boss, the headquarters sheltering manager, and reported the information. Bill was promised a call back with further instructions, but in the meantime, they agreed that the Smith family should be accommodated in a private room away from the main dormitory. In this case, Bill assigned them to room 114, and follow-up is required. The information is now recorded, the actions taken are noted, and it's in the log as an open issue. Now look at line 4. At 2 p.m. the same day, the day shelter manager received a call from the HQ sheltering manager advising her that James Smith is not required to report to law enforcement. So she moved the family out of room 114 back into the general dormitory. Issue closed. It bears repeating that these 2 entries would be in the shelter manager's log. They are confidential and will be kept private. The other 3 entries, on lines 2, 3, and 5, are typical of the entries made in the shelter log. When a disaster operation is concluded and the volunteers scatter to the 4 corners of the United States, the shelter manager's logs and the shelter logs are studied by Red Cross headquarters personnel. That's how the organization learns to do better the next time around. And unfortunately, there will be a next time around.